Good morning students. Hello and welcome to Avyan IAS Academy. Today we'll be taking one more part from back to basics. We did gerunds and now we'll do participles. So what are participles? We have been using participles mostly in our sentences, but probably we do not know that they are identified as participles. So participles is something which we use a lot in our sentences. For example, as you can see, hearing the noise, the boy woke up. So what is a participle? So this looks like a verb. It is certainly a verb, but is it just a verb? That is the question. So what it is what we call as verb adjectives. So as gerunds are verb nouns, participles are verb adjectives, which means as if we have to describe what participles are, we can say they are words ending in ing but having both the qualities of a noun, of a verb and an adjective. So it has two criteria to fulfill in order to become a participle, which is like it ends in an ing, and also it has the qualities of a verb as well as an adjective. So that is how we will be using a participle. Participles can also be referred as just verbal adjectives. As verbal adjectives. So this is what our participle in short is. We can do a few more examples to understand what participles are. So the examples could be: we met a girl, we met a girl carrying baskets of flour. So here we are using the word carrying as a verb as well as an adjective. So that is a participle that we are using. Then loudly knocking at the door, he demanded an answer. Once again, we are using the word knocking as a noun, as a verb as well as an adjective. Loudly knocking at the door, he demanded an answer. So this is once again, this is not a noun and a verb. It is an adjective and a verb, and that is how it is different from a gerund. And these are places where we often make mistakes in classifying them. So towards the end of the video, we'll also deal with the next. We can also say, but remember these when we are using the ing form, we are talking about in the present participles. The present participles. Right. So these are the present participles. However, participles are also used in the past. We will now look at few examples of the past participles. So what are past participles? As you can see, the quality of the verb as well as the adjective remains, but just that, as I had said, it needs an ing, which is for the present participle, but in the past participle we would be not needing an ing form, but we would be using the past form of the verb. So if we talk about past participles, the examples could be blinded by the storm, he ran for shelter. So the first example is being blinded by the storm, he ran for shelter. So this word is being used both as partially as a noun, partially as a verb and partially as an adjective. And it is also not used in the present form, it is used in its past form. So it is the past participle that we are doing. Next we can say time misspent is time lost. So it's time misspent is time lost, as we are taking the example of as we are taking the verb misspent. So time misspent is time lost. We can take one more example which says driven by hunger he stole a piece of bread. So this is our past participles. Remember, more than present participles, we sometimes use past participles in the sentences even without realizing that we are using them as past participles or participles in the sentences. So this is one of the most common form most commonly utilized parts in our sentences. We often just classify them as coming under verbs, but remember they have the quality of being used as an adjectives as well. It is usually noticed that past participle ends in ed, d, t, en or n. Usually past participles would end in the form of the verbs as ed, t, en or n. Spend, spent, awake, awaken. These are the usual examples which we can think for past participles. It could also be seen that they are used as qualifying adjectives in front of a noun, and then they are called participle adjectives. Now, how are we using them? We are using them in front of the using them as adjective participles. So how are they being used? That is in front of the noun. In front of the noun. Example: a rolling stone gathers no moss. So here we have the noun, that is stone, and here this rolling. So we are fulfilling both the conditions, that is it is being used in before the noun and it is being used to describe the noun. So it is as you can see with the ing, it's very clear that this is a present participle. But since it is describing the noun, it is not just a present participle, it's also an adjective participle. The next would be: we had a drink of sparkling water. So here in this sentence, we are using the word sparkling to describe the water. So hence we are using it both as an participle as well as an adjective, and certainly it is qualifying the noun, that is water. We can also say he played a losing game. It means it was a game which was already losing but he was still playing it. So he was playing a losing game. So we are classifying the game we are qualifying the game as a losing game. So this would be mostly about our how we can use it in form of an adjectives. We can also say he wore a worried look, or he if you want to use these two were examples of present. So if you want to go to the example of past participle as adjectives, it would be he wore a worried look. So here we are using the word wore. He wore a worried look. So that is it is like about wearing a look, but it's in the past form. So he wore a worried look. We can also say education is the most pressing need of our country. So that can also be another example of a participle, but we are using it in front of a noun. So we can also use past participles while we are trying to make sense of them in the passive meaning. While, as we say, if we are trying to make sense of it in the passive sense. Using participles in the passive sense. So how are we using the participles in the passive sense? It would be a spent swimmer, which means a swimmer who is tired. Then we can say a burnt child, which means a child who has suffered from burns. However, these are all using participles. It is not that we cannot write sentences without participles, but certainly using participles makes it more colloquial, and it is a better utilizing the even the verb as well as in adjectives, because we are doing it with one same word, but it's a lot more qualifying. It speaks about your grasp of how much you have over your language. We can say a painted doll, which means a doll which has been painted. Then we have, as I had said, a rolling stone, which means stone that's in motion. So this is how we use them in the passive sense. We were talking to a spent swimmer. Instead of saying we were talking to a swimmer who is already tired, we can just say we were talking to a spent swimmer. Rolling stone, we already talked with an example, like a rolling stone gathers no moss. Then talking about a burnt child. The burnt child was frightened even to speak. Then we can say a painted doll. The child was really happy with the painted doll which she was gifted on her birthday. So now let us go into a little more detail and see and recapitulate also what are the things we had learnt about using the participles. So in a participle, the first thing would be participles are used as verbal adjectives. The first utility would be as verbal adjectives. Like as we said, a rolling stone gathers no moss. The next it would be when it is used to govern a noun or a pronoun. used to govern a noun or a pronoun, which is like hearing the noise, he went up to the door. Right. So the next would be we can use them modified as an adverb. We'll again take that example, loudly knocking at the door. He demanded an answer. So here they have, it has been modified as an adverb. Remind you, it's not knocking which is the participle, it's loudly which is the participle here, and it has been it's modified with loudly. So knocking here is we are using it as a the knocking in itself cannot just be said as a participle, because the word knocking is certainly modified by the verb by the adverb loudly. So it's knocking loudly. So we are using both as a participle. I mean the sense and of the participle maybe just as a form it is on the word knocking, but if you want to make the clear meaning of this, it's like loudly knocking at the door, he demanded an answer. So we have modified the verb thoroughly with this. The next example could be as an adjective. As an adjective. Which is like having rested, they moved on their way. So it's having rested, they moved on their way. So it's about the rest which they had and then they are moving. The next would be as an adjective, it can be which can be compared. As an adjective which can be compared, which is like education is the most pressing need of our country. So education is the most pressing need of our country. So we also use participles in active forms, in passive forms. For example, if we want to use them in active forms, what is loving in the passive active form would become having loved in the passive form. For example, in the active form, if it is loving, in the passive form, it becomes having loved. So that is how we use it in the passive form. Sorry, it would be having been loved. We can also having loved would be in the same if we are talking about the present participle, and if we go over to the past participle, it would be having been loved. So the next if we want to use it in a continuous tense, If you want to use it in a continuous tense, we will be saying I am loving. Past would be I was loving. Future would be I shall be loving. So this is not entirely new for you, because in when we covered the tenses also we did this, because I am loving is in the present form, the past is I was loving, and the future it would be I shall be loving. So that's in the continuous tense. So if we want to take that in the tense in further, how we'll take it up? We could be taking it in the tenses of the verb. So these are also in the tenses of the verb. Certainly, we are also when we talk about participles, it certainly overlaps with the utility of the tenses. If we want to take this in the past tense, it would be I have loved. I am. Okay, past would be I had loved. Future would be I shall have loved. So we are talking about this in the past tense. I have loved, I had loved, I shall have or had loved. So that would be in our when we are trying to talk about participles in form of the past tense. So there is a very close overlap between learning the tenses and the participles. In fact, we could say if we learn either of them properly, the other is like sorted. So mostly generally, since we begin with tenses, so we can also say if we have learned the tenses properly, we can sort of figure out a lot of the participles. So we can also so as we had already said that we can use them attributively as well as predicatively. Attributively using is when we are using it before the noun, and predicative use of participles is when we are using them after the noun, that is in the predicate part of the sentence. So the attributive use would be before the noun. That is like we are talking about in attributes, like a rolling stone. We are defining the stone, this, and the predicative use would be in the predicate of the sentence. For example, the weather being fine, I went out. So the weather being fine, I went out. That is the predicative use of your participle. Next could be many having arrived, we were freed from anxiety. This is also a predicative use. Many having arrived, we were free from anxiety. So this is also like using it in a form of a predicate. So in but there are we will be using the same kind of sentences when we would be doing the clauses. This could also be classified as a conditional clauses. The other could be in a conditional clauses one, in which one part of the sentence is dependent on the other part. A conditional clauses one where we say if it rains I will not go, or that is like my going somewhere or not going somewhere is dependent on the rain. Or if we say whether I'll go to the party depends on whether he arrives on time. So these are also this same sentence can be taught to us while we are trying and doing conditional clauses, but it can also be used as in the absolute phrases. So in absolute phrases would be the spring's advancing, the swallows disappear. In absolute phrases. The spring approaching, swallows disappear. So that's like with the approach. So this is being using the participle in the absolute form. However, now let us come to towards the end of this, which would be like the very common errors which we make while using the participles. This part of this is also needed if you want to learn your error corrections properly for your exams. So the errors would be, the common errors are, if we take this as an example, standing at the gate, a scorpion stung him. So if you look at the sentence, standing at the gate, a scorpion stung him, the meaning of the sentence has entirely changed. It is because the sentence looks like because he was standing at the gate, he was stung by the scorpion. But is it even the meaning? Is it because he was standing at the gate, the scorpion stung him? Or we should say, in standing at the gate, he was stung by a scorpion. So this is a proper utility of a participle. It is not because he was standing at the gate, a scorpion went and stung him. It is like standing at the gate, he was stung by a scorpion. Also, we'll take 2 or 3 more examples of the same error correction, because that is what appears in our exams also. So one more example could be going to the hill, the temple was seen. So is it a correct way of using the participle? Is it just because you went to the hill you could see it? No, it would be like, the correct would be, while going to the hill, while going to the hill, the temple could be seen. So today we have dealt with a number of participles, how they are used in the past, present and future forms, and also how this is one of the most important parts of participle, because here we talk about the errors, because there are a lot of errors while we are trying to use participles, so we should try and minimize them. Read the sentence more than once and see if it is making sense to you. So that is, reading and rereading the same thing more than once can help us in giving understanding the sentences in a better way. So that would be all for today. Thank you and have a great day.